Hey there, my name's Keith and I'm the designer of Castles of Caleira, and I'm here to teach you how to play, considering we've just released the new Deluxe edition. So we're going to go through all the new cards and all the new things that come in that box. So the first thing that you need to be doing is looking through and finding the setup cards. They look just like this and they will have a list of the different cards on it. There's 3 different seasons: season 1, season 2, and season 3, and then there is the 4-player brawl. This list will determine what cards you need to separate and put into the deck to be playing with, because ordinarily you play with 18 cards. If there is 4 players, you tend to play with 20 cards, and the special 4-player brawl mode plays with every card, and it also includes a reminder of what all the cards in the deck are going to be, so they are very helpful. Once you've built your deck of 18 cards, for example this is the season 3 setup, you will shuffle it and then place it face down on the table in front of all of the players. And then for this example, we'll pretend we have 2 players, and then deal each player 2 cards. On your turn, you start by drawing a card, and then you play a card from your hand in front of you to create a tableau. This is just a line of cards basically. If you play a card face up, its effect will activate straight away, and I'll give you an example of the barracks. This is the barracks. We'll cover what it does in more detail later, but if I play the barracks face up, its ability will activate, and I will then choose a card to turn face down. That is the barracks ability, and that will be the end of my turn. Once all of the effects have finished resolving, then your turn ends and it moves to the other player. The game ends once every player has played all of the cards from their hand and all of the cards from the deck, which is where you enter scoring. You will look at all of the cards in your tableau and then count the points based on you can see here, the number on the bottom, or any cards that are still face down are worth 1 point, because if you do not choose to play a card face up and have it activate straight away, you can instead play it face down and it will remain face down until it is turned face up by the effect of another card. It's essentially you saving it for later so that you can have a bigger turn and use something like a watchtower to turn a bunch of cards face up and have a bunch of abilities that are more impactful towards the end of the game. This is kind of the main part of the strategy. And that's kind of everything when it comes to the actual core of playing the game. Everything else comes down to the different cards and their effects. So that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to go through all the different cards and I'm going to talk a bit about them and explain how they work. So let's start off with the trebuchet. The trebuchet says choose a castle piece and turn it face up, then destroy it. You do not need to specifically select a face down card for the trebuchet. The trebuchet will simply turn something face up if it can before destroying it. And because something is turned face up, that means that that ability will activate. And more specifically, because the whole ability of the trebuchet must resolve first, the card that is being destroyed will activate from the discard pile. I'll explain why that's going to be more relevant later on, but basically the trebuchet removes points from someone's tableau. You could destroy your own things should you want to, but it will also turn them face up and give them an ability and the option to activate before being removed. Next, we've got the watchtower. Like I said, it simply says turn up to 2 castle pieces face up. And to clarify, a castle piece is any in-play card. Once you've added something to your tableau, that's your castle, and every card in it is a castle piece. The watchtower lets you choose 0, 1, or 2 cards that are in anyone's tableau and turn them face up. You can select face up cards if you wish. It would just do nothing, which is the same as selecting 0 cards. There are a lot of options for you to have no outcomes in this game, but you must attempt to fulfill all criteria as best as possible. Next, we have the battlements. So the battlements cannot be destroyed. So if you target a battlements with a trebuchet, it will not be destroyed. If you have a face down battlement and a trebuchet targets it, it will turn face up. It cannot be destroyed text suddenly exists now, and the trebuchet cannot destroy it. So your battlements are safe. The next line of text is, if a player has all 3 battlements in play at the end of the game, each battlement become worth 3 points. So they all have to be face up. You have to complete the whole set. And they cannot be destroyed, but they can be turned face down and they can be removed from the game with the clifftop prison. So your goal is to try and get all 3 battlements face up safely at the end of the game for them each to become worth 3 points, which is a total of 9 points and is very strong. The next one is the marketplace. It says exchange a card from your hand with another player. You're going to choose a card from your hand. They're going to choose a card from their hand, and you'll swap those cards. If there is a play with no cards in hand, the exchange cannot be made. If you select that player, marketplace will functionally do nothing. One last thing, right as I remembered. Barracks, like we were covering before, it simply says turn a castle piece face down. That means that, for example, I play my trebuchet face up, I destroy a thing, I then play the barracks and turn the trebuchet face down. That means that if I turn the trebuchet face up again, it will activate a second time and I will get an opportunity to destroy another card. But same as with the battlements just before, if I turn one of the battlements face down and it can't be turned face up again, that means that those 3 points set each is not going to activate. Next up is the banquet halls. So with the banquet halls, you choose a player to reveal their hand. Then choose one of those cards that have been revealed to be placed on the bottom of the deck, and then that player draws a card to replace it. And then, for example, if I'm playing a 2-player game and I choose my opponent, when I banquet halls them, they will lose a card. They will draw a card to replace it, and then they will draw a card to start their turn. So they're still always going to be looking at 3 cards, unless if it is at the end of the game. If there is no cards in the deck, that card becomes the deck, and then they draw that card again, so nothing really happens. You can select yourself. If you select yourself, you reveal your hand to everyone. Same as the person that you selected reveals their hand to everyone. And then you can select one of your cards, put it on the bottom of the deck, and then you draw a card, and then it becomes the next player's turn. Next is the clifftop prison. So you choose a castle piece an opponent controls and remove it from the game face down. This is usually indicated. Let me get my fancy cards out. So let's say this is our clifftop prison, the throne room part. Let's say this is it. When you steal a card, you would put it underneath your one, indicating that it has been eaten specifically by the clifftop prison. And you remove from the game face down. When this card is destroyed, return that card to play face up. So it does specifically say destroyed, but also if a clifftop prison eats another clifftop prison, that card will also be returned to play face up. Basically, the clifftop prison will exist and eat a card. If anything happens to the clifftop prison, that card comes back and is returned to where it was taken from, and then is turned face up. So that card will then have an opportunity to activate again. Clifftop prison is a little confusing, but once you get in the habit of just, I eat your thing, oh, you removed mine, cool, you get it back, it feels a lot more straightforward. Next is the Dragon Skin Galleon. Choose a player. During that player's next turn, any card effects they activate cannot target you or your castle pieces. This is specifically worded for multiplayer. So rather than none of you can do anything to me, it's this one guy can't interact with me. In a 2-player game, it's just like you can't do anything to me, which is not very interactive. So this is made more for multiplayer, where it's like, okay, you're the person I'm worried about, or I'm the leader, and I think this person is going to be picking on me next. I'm going to stop you from doing anything to me during your next turn. Next is the Dread Omen Singer. So you name a card. Any player may reveal a card with that name from their hand to put it on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. This is similar to the banquet halls, but there is a order of process here. So you play the Dread Omen Singer, and then you name a card. Let's say Watchtower. Every other player before you has an opportunity, and it will go around clockwise. So starting with the person after you, they will have an opportunity to go, yes, I have the Watchtower. They put it on the bottom of the deck, they draw a card, and then when it comes back to you, you get to go, cool, I have the watchtower, put it on the bottom, I will draw a card. Most of the time this doesn't come up. Most of the time you'll name something that you have and they don't have, or no one will have. And you can always choose not to. You can name a card and you can choose not to put it on the bottom. This gives you an option to do some filtering, and also if you know that you're the last player, then the card that is on the bottom is going to be the last card that you draw. So you might be able to put something on the bottom to save for later. Next we have the observatory. So look at a face down castle piece, you may turn it face up. Basically, similar to the watchtower where you get to turn something face up, but you get to look at what it is first before making that choice. So if you look at something, you go, oh, this is a trebuchet, this can be really bad for me, I'll leave that face down. If you look at something, you go, oh, this is the princess spire, that's really good for me, I will turn it face up. And this gives you the opportunity to check. Next is the princess spire. So it cannot be played face up, which means that on the last turn, if it's your very, very last card, you have to play it face down. You cannot just play it face up because it is worth 6 points. However, if the princess spire is destroyed by a trebuchet, you lose the game. And you are just kind of removed from contention, from victory. You put all of your castle pieces and your hand into the discard pile in a multiplayer game, and then you exit shamefully, I guess. This card was designed more with the intention for younger players to be focusing on this rather than focusing on the mathematics of trying to win the game, to give them an objective rather than building the tableau objective. Something different to focus on to make it a bit easier to catch on the game and how it works. But there's a lot of strategy in how you can protect the princess spire. The moat exists. You can play it face down, and if you are the last player and no one has found where you've played it face down, you can turn it face up and safely not have a turn pass. You can try and get all of the trebuchets into play, and if you count them, you go, oh, all trebuchets have been played, I can play the princess spire, there's nothing that is going to destroy it anymore. So there's a lot of strategy in around trying to keep it afloat, basically. Next is the forge. So with the forge, you select a face-up castle piece and you activate its effect. However, the forge is the card that will activate all of the related effects. And then you as the player will choose all the targets and stuff for that. So for example, if I play the forge and I select the trebuchet, I can choose to destroy something of my opponent's. However, with something like the tide skipper, which we'll see in a moment, and I'll go into a bit more detail, the forge is the thing that will be activating, not the tide skipper. And the tide skipper moves between different players' tableaus. You would be sending the forge over to somebody else, which is not what you want to do. So always keep in mind that it's you that does everything, and it's the forge that does everything. It just steals the effect text from a different card. Next up is the moat. So castle pieces next to the moat cannot be a target of your opponent's castle pieces. So if you have a princess spire next to the moat, your opponent cannot trebuchet it. You can trebuchet it, you can watch tower to turn it face up, all that kind of stuff, but your opponent cannot target it with anything. The moat keeps it safe, which is a very good card for multiplayer because it's a bit harder to keep the princess spire alive in multiplayer. Next up we have the throne room. So the throne room says turn a castle piece face up. That card has no effect this turn. This doesn't do anything to cards that don't do anything immediately, like the princess spire, like the battlements. They just kind of sit there and go, okay. And if there's no effect this turn, then at the end of the turn, you would go back to doing anything ordinarily. So instead it was just like, well, this does nothing to this thing because there is an effect not about to happen. It's just like a passive ability. So for example, I throne room a face down trebuchet. The trebuchet is turned face up. Normally this would allow it to activate and it would destroy something, but the throne room says no, you do not do anything, it is cancelled, and then the trebuchet stays face up. This is very good specifically for finding and cancelling trebuchets, but also for getting the tide skipper stuck in one place, which we're going to talk about now. So the tide skipper is the season 3 replacement for the princess spire because it is a much more strategically viable card. Like the princess spire is very much, did you find me? Are you able to protect me? The tide skipper is all about moving that -3 points around the different board and swapping with other cards. because what it says is swap this card with another player's face up castle piece. Then turn this card face down. So what happens is you play the Tideskipper face up, it'll swap with another card, and then turn itself face down. That means that if you watch Tower it again, it will turn face up and it will do it again. So you could potentially move around multiple times because it turns itself face down. However, if you thrown her in the Tideskipper, it turns face up, it will not move because its ability is cancelled, and then it's stuck sitting there with a -3 points, which is kind of the goal, to try and steal something worth a bit of points and then lock the Tideskipper in one location. However, with the barracks, you could turn the Tideskipper back face down and then turn it face up again to move around one more time. So there is kind of a lot of options when it comes to manipulating a Tideskipper. It's a lot of fun, kind of moving around, picking who's going to be stealing this thing and doing that, which seems to work really well. And then we have our last card, the Wizard Tower. This one's really simple. You look at the top 3 cards of the deck and then you put them back in any order that you wish. In a 2-player game, you know that your opponent's going to draw 2 of those cards because it'll be them, you, them. So you put the card that you want in the middle. In a 4-player game, you're not going to see any of the cards, so you're picking which person you want to draw each individual thing. And then in a 3-player game, you're just going to be drawing the last card, and then it'll be opponent number 1, opponent number 2, and then you with the last one. Keeping that kind of stuff in mind, you get to stack the deck with whatever you think you need. Maybe you see a battlements that you need to complete the set. Maybe you see a battlements that you don't want to give to somebody because it's going to do nothing because the set's been broken up. It gives you a little bit of freedom in what's going to happen in the next couple of turns of the game. But that is Castles of Caleira. That is kind of a bit of a deep dive at all the different cards in the game. The actual mechanics of what you're doing is kind of straightforward. You are just kind of drawing a card, playing a card, resolving its effects. That's it. All the cards are done. Cool. Check what the scores are, see who wins. But there is a lot of opportunity for different strategic depth in how all the different cards come together and stuff like that. It's one that I've really enjoyed. I've been working on it for 7 years now. The Deluxe edition has just released, so if you want to get your copy of that, check it out. I'm going to have a link down in the description for that. But hopefully we'll be seeing all of you building your own castles, making the greatest kingdom that Caleira remembers.